Konnichiwa, Minasan. It's Gray from Akazashi's Tea House over in Japan. How you doing? You good? You genki? I'm pretty good, thanks. Now, this month has been a 5-week Tuesday and Wednesday month, so that means there's not really many releases out today. So what I'm doing, I've got a review of a comic that came out last week. This is Amazing Spider-Man issue 8. Still written by Zeb Wells. It's got art by John Romita Jr. Now, what I'm going to do with this for a change, I'm not going to give my usual review and like short story summary going through it. What I'll do is I'm going to give my thoughts and then thoughts of the fandom, like Spider-Man fans, especially long-term Spider-Man fans who are not very keen on this run, and I'm going to give you reasons why. Also, I'm going to plan to read through a couple of reviews. Okay, so as always, please keep watching. Here we go. Amazing Spider-Man issue 8. Now for me there's very little plot progression in this issue. Not a lot happens aside from a long fight with the Vulture. And I had no idea the Vulture was so dangerous. Peter seemed to be afraid for his life. At one point he tells Norman Osborn that he's going to die if he doesn't get help. Are you serious? Also, the Goblin-Tech Spidey suit and the glider was a bit weird. It added weapons to Spidey which I felt was off. You've got these little like bombs which project nanobot spiders and blind the Vulture temporarily. Also there's the cringy idea, I mean this is really cringe, to have an emoji display on Peter's mask. Really? Like what were you thinking, Zeb Wells? Do you think that would be a good idea? Now here's some of the fans' complaints which I've been hearing on YouTube and like reading in reviews. Peter asking Norman Osborn for help and possibly going to work for him. Now a lot of fans really don't like this. They can't imagine Peter working with Norman after all that he's put Peter through in the past. We're on issue 8 and we still don't know what happened to cause a huge rift between Peter and Mary Jane, also his Aunt May and some of his closest friends. It was alluded to in issue 1, but readers have been left hanging and just wondering like when it's going to be told and what actually happened. Also, there's been no explanation for why MJ appears to now have 2 young children. Never mind the fact that she's in a relationship with a different man, with somebody else called Paul, and one of the children looks just like her. It's like a mini version of her. What is going on? John Romita Jr.'s art is dividing a lot of fans. Some people like it, others want to see a different artist on the book. For me, I quite like it. I like the way he does action, I like the facial expressions, although sometimes the faces can look a bit like a Minecraft video game. So I can understand a lot of the long-term fans' frustrations with this current run, but if you've been watching my videos, been watching my reviews of it, you'll know that I've been enjoying it. Now maybe that's because I've been away from Spidey for a long time. I'm coming back after a huge gap away, so yeah, I've been enjoying it, but it is starting to feel like it's being stretched out. It is feeling like that Zeb Wells is not giving us what we want to know. He's not telling us what we want to know. It's just like mystery box after mystery box, which seems to be a real current theme, doesn't it, in both comics and movies and TV these days. Okay, I want to read from one of the reviews on Goodreads. This is for this issue and it's by a user just called A, and he rated it, or she rated it, 1 star out of 5. Now this review contains spoilers, so if you don't want to know about this issue and more of what's happened in the past during Zeb Wells' run, then please stop listening now and skip to the end. Okay, but I've got to read this because it's a very entertaining negative review. Here we go. So A says, remember the damp squib that was Amazing Spider-Man 900 or issue 6 in this run, which was so bad that a leading theory was that Dan Slott must have been the ghostwriter? Turns out no, Zeb Wells is just that dumb and hackneyed of a writer. Quick PSA. If you're here because you want to know about the mysteries Wells set up in issue 1, what did Peter do? Why were people mad at him? And then go over it quickly. Why is MJ living with a guy named Paul and has 2 small children, including one who is a traced copy of her? You can save your money. None of this is touched on. There's no advancement. Wells either forgot or he just doesn't give a flying crap about his readers, and the evidence is leaning towards the latter. It's jaw-dropping just how arrogant Wells is coming across, how much he appears to believe he doesn't owe people who are paying $3.99 or more for a coherent story. Nick Lowe, the editor, also comes in for his share of scorn. He's the editor who apparently thinks this is an appropriate product to put on the shelf. As for the actual story in this issue, it's not. It's a highly contrived setup that ignores established characterization and established continuity just so Spider-Man can wear a new suit. Soon appearing in the toy section of Walmart. Put it on your holiday wish list now. That's it. So here comes a recap. Walk away now if you don't want spoilers. You know the drill. When we last left Peter, the Vulture was really angry because his granddaughter, Tiana, was the very last teenager to discover the internet and search engines, and she learned her grandfather was a murderer. So instead of being angry at websites for printing the truth, he decides he's super angry at Spider-Man for mentioning to Tiana that, hey, your granddaddy did some bad things, which led to her finally discovering the wonders of Google. So the Vulture picked up Spider-Man, took him up very high, stripped off his web shooters and dropped him. We pick up with Spidey falling. He finally remembers he has pressurized web fluid canisters in his belt, which he breaks open and creates a kind of web cocoon that keeps him inches from hitting the ground. But he can't exhale too much of a sigh of relief because here comes the Vulture again, who slams him into a brick chimney. Apparently this one impact is too much for Peter and his spider strength and his fast healing, because he takes out his wholly intact phone and calls Norman Osborn to beg him for help. Let me repeat that. Calls Norman Osborn to beg him for help. Let the horror of those 8 words sink in. Peter Parker calls Norman Osborn and begs him. And Norman says no, but not without first crushing his cell phone, which of course is signalling that Norman still has his Goblin formula super strength. So of course Norman still has some of the green Goblin left inside of him. Of course he does. And I can't decide who should be more insulted, the reader or Peter Parker. So instead of Peter figuring out a way to fight Toomes without his web shooters, he jumps on Toomes' back, finds a way to steer the Vulture like he's some kind of like Mario Kart, and gets Toomes to fly him to Oscorp. Let's review for a second. Peter figures out he can steer the Vulture and get him to fly into buildings. Sounds like a good way to eventually beat him, no? Think of the possibilities. But no, instead, Peter just wants access to his toys. In a split second, he gets off Toomes, finds his Iron Man rip-off suit, and then easily takes down Toomes with things like spider bombs. They're nano spider bots that blind Toomes, sounding more like a bullying frat beau than his usual quippy self. And he's super upset he's already knocked Toomes unconscious, so he can't show off that his new helmet can turn into emojis. A truly cringe moment that's the comic book embodiment of how do you do, fellow kids? Peter then yells at Norman for not helping him, with Norman explaining that he didn't help because he was scared of backsliding back into being the Goblin. And you can just see Wells trotting out all of his addiction metaphors before this story's over. That of course does not explain why Norman didn't find another way to get the suit to him, since Peter said he was about to die. That's not very considerate. So Peter finally shakes hands with Norman and agrees to work with him, even though we know that Norman's going to get right back on that old glider in just a few short months. So much for Peter believing Norman means it when he says he wants to change, he wants to stay off the glider. Not a word about Mary Jane, even though the next issue has her in it. It's the follow-up to the Hellfire Gala, where Jerry Duggan turned her into a mindless meat puppet kidnapped by Moira McTaggart, because that's not typical of the misogynistic way Marvel treats Mary Jane. Oh wait, it totally is typical. But she'll probably be revealed to be sitting at home with Paul and the kids after Moira dropped her with a mind wipe. Either that, or she really will be fridged with Dark Web being about a resurrection. Regardless of what does happen, we already know it's going to be a damp squib of disappointments that probably will still keep the mystery boxes closed, because that's Wells for you. Skip this issue, use the $3.99 to buy a small coffee at Starbucks, or half a dozen eggs, or less than a gallon of gasoline. All things that will give you infinitely more joy and value. That's it. I've condensed it a little bit, I've skipped a few lines, but that review, it just made me laugh. It's hilarious. It's a very clever negative review. As I was saying earlier, it's kind of a kind of common voice for a lot of the long-term fans from what I've been seeing on videos and hearing in the chat. So yeah, despite Gray Wakizashi kind of enjoying this run, it's not going down well with a lot of people. Okay, here's a preview of issue 9, which is out in a couple of weeks. Now look at the cover, we've got a surprise, well not really a surprise is it, a big star guest in this. As far as I know, there's going to be a couple of X-Men crossover issues coming up. The first one's got to do with the Hellfire Gala, and the one after that is got a tie-in with the Axe event which is going on at the moment, which is Avengers, X-Men and Eternals, which I'm not reading. Okay, so can I just say, as always, thank you so much for watching. Please leave me a comment, let me know what you think about this video, what you think about my thoughts, and also like the long-term Spider-Man fans' thoughts on the current run. And are you reading the current run? Are you enjoying Zeb Wells' take? How about John Romita Jr.'s art? You know, I'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment, let me know what you think. Okay, this is Gray from Wakizashi's Tea House, signing off for the night. Matane. Wakizashi's Tea House. Please subscribe.